In today's photo deconstruction, I'm photographing an avant-garde makeup look. So I'm going to show you how I use 3 lights, 2 gels, and post-processing for an image that really pops. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I cannot take credit for this image. This look is all the brilliance of Joanne Guerre. Joanne Guerre is one of the makeup artists I work with, and she is incredibly talented. If you look her up, some of the most famous images of all time, especially in the world of body paint, they are her creation. And so on one of our creative play days, I invited Joanne to create an avant-garde makeup look, whatever she wanted. I gave her no input. It's whatever she wanted to make. And so this is what she came up with. Her references were looking at a lot of abstract visuals, a lot of Picasso. And so she wanted to create something that abstracted and kind of moved the face around a little bit using makeup. And so we went with really poppy colors. And the question was, when somebody creates something so avant-garde, so creative, what does photography add to the equation? Like, what can I do with my lighting or with my in-camera effects that will showcase the makeup and not take away from it? Now, by the way, if you want to photograph avant-garde looks like this, well, you are in luck because I have an intensive workshop called Avant-Garde Beauty. You can actually check the links in the description below so that you can join me. And we're photographing avant-garde, hair, creative, makeup. The looks are going to be by some of the most talented artists, full stop, like in the world, all for you to create. And of course, I'm going to talk about the lighting and my creative approach. So there's opportunities to make beautiful images and to learn. All right, so let's take a look behind the scenes. I created this image with 3 different lights. So let's start with our main light. The main light we have here is a beauty dish with a grid. I wanted this because it would be flattering to the face, but also give us a little bit more pop. And I know that when I use harder lights, when somebody has used face paint, something like this, it can get kind of shiny. It can get a little bit reflective, especially when the makeup is a little bit more wet. So I didn't want to go with a really hard light source because it becomes a little bit more challenging to photograph. So by selecting a beauty dish, it would be a little bit smoother across the makeup and face. Then I wanted to create a high key background, something clean, something simple, because I thought that would be an important way to show off the makeup. I don't want a really complex background or a super colorful background because I thought that might take away from Joanne's artistry. So for our background here, I went with a 5-foot octabox, but then in that octabox, I put a teal blue gel. What that allows me to do is if I overexpose that softbox, so I go really bright, the background will be pure white, but then some of that teal blue light, it'll actually wrap around the jawline and the subject's neck. In this image, I have the subject directly against the background, like she is physically right up against it with her shoulders. And that's going to give me even more wrap of light. So we've got our beauty dish main, our 5-foot octa background light with the teal blue gel, and then our third and final light is a fill light from the front. I'm using a 1x4-foot strip softbox and on it a cyan blue gel. What this will do is it'll take any of the shadows underneath the subject's jawline, any shadows in the image and fill them in blue, but it will also desaturate her skin tone because it's filling in the image overall, so it just cools everything down. Now, before we take a look at what was achieved in camera versus post-processing, let's talk about my camera. I'm shooting with a Canon R5 and I was grabbing the RF 70-200 2.8. This is a fantastic beauty lens. And I did some shots that were cropped in so tight so I could see like every texture of the brush strokes and the painting on the subject's face. And then I did a few that were pulled farther back so that they were a little bit more head and shoulders. So this lens gave me that flexibility. All right, so let's take a look one more time at the final image. So now that we're looking at the final image, you can actually see the lighting I was describing. Do you see how around her hairline, it's kind of a teal blue? And then even on the sides of her arms or a little bit here on her neck and clavicles, that is all from the gel in the softbox behind her. Then when it comes to the blue, you see the blue in the shadows underneath her fingertips or a little bit kind of underneath her nose here. Those shadow areas absorb any color you give it with gels. This is something that if you don't know much about, you should check out my class, The Magic of Gels. I cover this in depth. So this is what it looked like in the end. But let me show you what it looked like in camera. Now, when I say in camera, when I shoot, I'm always shooting tethered. So when it came in, it looked really flat. While I'm shooting tethered, I'm processing a lot of contrast. I'm cooling down the white balance a little bit. And so I'm seeing something that's a little bit closer to its final form. So this is what was captured in camera. There's a couple reasons it looks so flat. I was shooting into a softbox, and anytime you shoot into a light source, you get lens flare. Like, this is what it looks like. It is a lower contrast image because I'm shooting into a light. So in Capture One, as I'm shooting tethered, I added a ton of contrast. I cooled down the white balance a little bit, and then I desaturated anything for skin tone. So this is the before and this is the after. Now, if you actually look at it, the retouching, there's a bit on the skin, especially on the forehead. And I got rid of the finger next to the face. But for the most part, a lot of that had to do with brightening up the image. Now, of course, I did this in RAW because that's where I have the most flexibility. But if you look, if I brighten up the image and increase the contrast. So here was what I shot out of camera. That was just contrast. And it made a ton of difference. Now, this is where I actually ended up. I cooled down things even more and paled them out a tiny bit. So it was basically in camera, once I added some contrast, once I did a little bit of retouching. And so I did a tiny bit of improvement on the makeup just to clean up some lines. You can see some of these crisp lines. You know, we moved them around a little bit. So I wanted to help the makeup artist out without changing what she had done fundamentally, but instead just cleaning up some of the lines. This, I generally ask the makeup artist, is it meant to be messy and textured, or is it meant to be crisp and precise? And this was meant to be more crisp and precise. This is one of those examples where I went in between clean and creative. I kept the background clean. I kept the creative and camera effects really low, but I wanted to emphasize the color palette she had selected. And that's why I grabbed the teal light for around her jawline and the side of her face, and then the cyan blue as a fill light. I took the color palette that was already in the makeup, used that in the lighting in order to enhance what the makeup artist presented me with. So if you want to see the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below, and of course, visit adorama.com. And don't forget, if you want to photograph incredible looks like these, be sure to check out learnwithlindsay.com. Go to the workshop section. I have many different hands-on workshops. Some of them are avant-garde makeup. Others are about fashion photography, about creative lighting, photographing the human form, and so much more. So you'll definitely want to check that out to see my next year's calendar. I hope that you've enjoyed this photo deconstruction, and I encourage you to like, subscribe, and to share with friends so that you can learn together. Thanks everyone for joining me, and I'll see you next time.